Welcome to the Empower Hour with Greater Nashua Mental Health. The Empower Hour will provide information and support about mental health, substance use, and behavioral health. Our goal is to share inspiring stories about transforming lives, to strike down stigma, and to encourage our community to reach out and get help when needed. Mental health is part of all of our lives. It's time we talk about it. I'm Dr. Cynthia Whitaker, President and CEO of Greater Nashua Mental Health, and it's time to get empowered. Hello, and welcome to the Empower Hour with Greater Nashua Mental Health. I'm Dr. Cynthia Whitaker, and I have the privilege of being the President and CEO of Greater Nashua Mental Health. We host this show to empower our community to learn more about mental health, to learn more about services, and to just be better informed to be the best community we can be. I'm excited today to have Lieutenant Chad MacGregor of the Nashua Police Department here with me as my guest. Welcome, Chad.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here today so we can talk about the improvements, the education, just the ongoing collaboration between mental health and law enforcement that's happened over the past several years.
Yes.
Feels like maybe even a decade or so.
That's been a while.
So I don't know if you want to start with who you are, your little journey of Nashua PD, just so folks get a sense of what you do.
Yeah, sure thing. My name's Chad MacGregor. I've been with Nashua PD for 19 years. I currently work as a lieutenant in our legal bureau, which means I oversee criminal prosecution as well as I carry a small caseload myself. With 19 years, I haven't been doing that the whole time. I started off as a patrol officer, was a domestic violence victim specialist. After that, I worked as a criminal investigation division detective, special investigations division detective, and then a patrol sergeant, detective sergeant, patrol lieutenant, and now I am a legal bureau lieutenant. So it's been a good ride.
Yeah, 19 years is quite some time.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, I've been at the mental health center for almost 18, so
Wow.
I know what it's like to be in the same organization, but make a lot of shifts and changes.
Yeah, it's always changing, which is great to be in an organization and to be in a community that's always changing and evolving.
Yeah, where you get to have the opportunity to do different things.
Yep, very much.
I don't think I really realized how much career development there can be within the police department until more recently.
Yes.
Just how much I've met people like you and some others who've been with the police department for a long time.
Yeah, it's really good the way they do it because you learn a different skill set, and as soon as you get comfortable, it's time to learn a new job. And who would have thought at 18 years, either been patrol or in detectives the entire time, and we're going to send you over to prosecution, and it's been great to learn. So keeps me on my toes, which I like.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know one of the things we really wanted to focus on is the collaboration, the understanding. Nashua Police Department specifically, but even more generally, has had in the last few years kind of understanding the importance of knowing about mental health. And so I don't know where you want to start in that journey or...
Yeah, sure. It's been really, really good over the last couple of years to really kind of dive into this ongoing issue and to really, think of the best way to serve the community and the best way to serve the individual. And that has been really a priority of the Nashua Police Department and as well as law enforcement to really kind of dive into it and to work and do the best we can. I've been very privileged to be heavily involved in this process, and it's been a really, really cool and interesting journey to take. And when we first started to dive into this, it was what's the best way to do this? So it was a lot of research. It was a lot of attending a lot of different trainings, a lot of bringing back trainings for the officers, a lot of policy development, making sure that our policy was up to date, making sure we're pushing out that best training to our officers, and really trying to be ahead of this as much as we could to best serve the community. It's a very complex, multifaceted problem that takes a lot to go into effectively deal with these situations, and every situation's different. So it's been a really, really interesting process to go through.
Yeah, I look back even on my almost 18 years at the mental health center, and even at the very beginning of that, so nearly 2 decades ago, the mental health center was providing some informational type training to the the Nashua Police Department about our clients and IEA processes and how we could work together. Flash forward to, maybe 10 years ago when police are getting more formalized training with critical intervention training, right? CIT.
Crisis intervention.
Crisis intervention, there it is. Too many acronyms.
Yeah, everything's very acronym heavy.
Right, and now, all the way to the police having a social worker now within the department. What a journey of really recognizing how important it is, and then constantly iterating and getting better and learning more.
Yeah, and that's the key right there, is the evolution of this, right? Like, what did it start with? Back in 2005, when I first got on, we had a few hours of mental health training. Sue Mead, one of your outreach workers for the Greater Nashua Mental Health, would come to the in-service academy with the Nashua Police Department and train us for a couple hours. There was a couple hours at the police academy. And that was basically it. There was maybe a little bit more training as it involved to the IEA process. But then probably around the 2017, 2018 timeframe was when this became really pushed out as something to really reprioritize. And nowadays we have a fair amount of officers that are trained in critical crisis intervention training, which is a 40-hour training.
Right.
Almost all of our officers are trained in mental health first aid, which is an 8-hour training. And this is stuff that's re-upped and retrained on very regularly. It's something that's very, very heavily emphasized. Additionally, like a lot of our new supervisors, I sit down and train with them on a couple different topics to make sure they're ready, particularly in the area of suicidal subjects response. And areas of that is stuff that's really heavily emphasized upon to make sure we're doing this the right way and helping out these people when we can.
Yeah, I love that comparison, right? So it was something that, we knew was important and we trained on a little bit to, we need to give this even more time and constant conversation, not like a one and done checkbox.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much that goes into it. Being somewhat literate in mental health, being able to understand where those barriers are of communication, being able to potentially recognize what someone might be experiencing to aid in that communication process is hugely important. But then it comes down to knowing the proper services, right? Because it's not just, let's call the ambulance and have them deal with it. Is it Greater Nashua Mental Health? Is it another service? What might it be in trying to connect them to the appropriate service? So having that area of understanding what the problem is and then being able to properly connect is huge. And to also do it in a safe manner is the key thing here. Safe for all involved, the officers, the family members, the individuals, all of that. So it's a very complex thing. Yeah. That's probably why a lot of us are so drawn into it, because it's something that's, it's a priority for us, and let's figure out the best way to do it.
Yeah, I love that. And what just popped into my head too is it's complex, and yet it's not complex once you know, right? Like a lot of times people think about the mental health system as so complex and not understanding how to get in it, right? Who do I call? Where do I go? And then sometimes it's as simple as knowing one telephone number.
Correct.
Right. And but we forget that, and we don't always share that information, right? And so people face, just like the public might face frustration in figuring out how to access the mental health system. I think there were times where the police experienced a lot of frustration until it became much clearer. No, just call this one person and they'll help you. You know?
That's definitely a valid point. The complexities of it, I mean, sometimes it can be boiled down just to that simple: obtaining the best information you can and working to connect them to the right folks. Sometimes it can be that simple, but that's unfortunate.
It's not
always that simple.
It's not always that simple. Yeah.
And it's for me and for us, it comes back to really meeting these folks where they're at. Where they're at, understanding that recovery is relative, understanding that whatever the reporting incident that we're there to investigate might not be the priority for that individual at that time, and trying to work through and navigate those scenarios is really important.
Yeah, and I think it can be easy to get tunnel vision if you don't think about those complexities and the possibilities of things being bigger or different.
Yeah, these things, in my opinion, and a lot of our opinion, we can't just roll into it thinking, what's the enforcement action here?
Right.
Okay. All right. Is this just a simple criminal trespass of this person, or are there something else on board that we can figure out? Understanding that enforcement is an option and something to be mindful of, but not maybe not the first choice for every scenario.
Yeah,
which is important.
I think about in physical health, right? People talk a lot about root causes, right? We don't want to just treat symptoms; we want to treat root causes. And I think in many ways, that's very similar to the police department has shifted its thinking, right? Like, yes, we can treat the symptom, we can show up, we can enforce, but if we don't treat the root cause, we'll just be here 3 weeks from now doing the same thing all over again.
We'll be here tomorrow doing the same thing. Or in 2 hours, who knows?
Right.
So I think trying to, provide a better service is ultimately what it comes down to. And at the end of the day, like, enforcement is a large part of why we're here, and that's stuff we have to do, but that's something to be mindful of.
Yeah.
Make sure we're using that option appropriately.
Yeah, and if there is something like that can be used to prevent more or in the future, that's what we all want. It's the outcome we all want, is to not be here again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with being in the legal bureau now, if an enforcement action does happen, we can use various means through the court process to get people the help that they need. So that doesn't necessarily automatically mean a negative outcome, right? There has been some positive gains that have gained through court-mandated treatment or required treatments in mental health court as well. There has been a lot of impactful positive gains there. So just because it had to go that way doesn't necessarily mean it's a one-stop shop and that's it. There's a lot of options.
Exactly, and I think that's where I've seen the shift. Like a lot of our connections early on, we're doing the 2-hour training and, was at that tail end, right? Yep. So, we've had mental health court at Greater Nashua Mental Health. We've been the service provider for that for a number of years, and then drug court.
Yes.
And we were often collaborating with police on that end, right? But now flash forward, we are more trying to collaborate on the prevention end, right? And so I think about mobile crisis.
Yes.
And we've had 2 fits and starts with it, the local version and then the statewide version. But that's like collaboration, hopefully on the sooner end, like trying to prevent it.
And it's all about the way, wherever we can insert the help is what we're looking to do. Obviously, ounce of prevention, pound of cure, earlier is better. However we can kind of circle back and apply the services in a quicker, more efficient manner, that's something that we're willing to always be mindful of. So if we could avoid the enforcement and not have it be a court-mandated thing, great. If it does have to go the enforcement route and we can get it through the court, that'll work out too.
Wherever we can get it is where we want it.
Basically, wherever we can be impactful, we will. And again, my current job is in the legal bureau, and a lot of our stuff, instead of imposing or suspending fines, we're looking to, obtain treatment and provide proof that you're meaningfully participating, and we'll waive a fine or do something like that. And that's proved to be very effective. Yeah. Because that'll hopefully be that behavior change or help people where they're at, right? And I think that's been a pretty effective tool.
Do any success stories come to your mind from collaboration, whether they've been kind of more on the mental health court side or mobile crisis side? Like, can you think of any?
I can think of a few scenarios that have been pretty helpful. I remember one. It was a lady that wasn't from around here. Not exactly sure how she got here, but she was going up and down Main Street with all her luggage, setting up in various coffee shops and not leaving when requested. So we would get called there and kind of move her along and then be called a couple minutes later. And there was some mental health stuff on board as well as some housing issues. And this could have been where we just keep on taking enforcement action for criminal trespass, but that's not addressing the root cause here.
Right.
Leveraged mobile crisis and was able to ultimately connect her with services, and ultimately she went back to where she originated from, which is where she wanted to go. It was, I want to say something in Maine or something like that, but she was able to get home where she wanted to be instead of being, unhoused in Nashua, and that worked out really, really well. So that was a good positive story. Yeah, great collaboration efforts, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And like you said, instead of sticking with only the enforcement side, which we wouldn't have got the outcome we needed. It's okay. Let's a little bit of that, and
let's work through this problem. What's actually going on, and credit to everyone for paying attention and being mindful of what it was, and the mobile crisis folks are being like, okay, there's little of this, little of that, but still sounds like something we could get involved in, and that worked out really, really well. And I can think of multiple scenarios through the court, especially specifically in the domestic violence space, where mental health was at play, and the proper services, both on the victim side and the defendant side, were leveraged, and those situations have quelled where they're not as volatile and everything. So that was always huge, to be able to keep people safe and get people the help that they need.
Well, and I know that in training a lot of therapists and mental health professionals, when on our side, we've had to train people too, right? We often talk a lot about the training that police require, but I think mental health professionals also require training.
That's
and we
for sure.
always remind folks, right, when police are on scene, their first and priority is always safety, right? And that's not always what's first in mind for a mental health clinician. And so just knowing that difference is so important.
It was interesting too, a lot of the collaborative efforts with mobile crisis, as far as like safety is a big thing for both sides. And we're like, well, if we tell you the scene's safe, it is safe. We're not introducing you to an unsafe scene. That's the last thing we're going to do here. And that was kind of always fun to go through, like what we do to determine the scene being safe. Because at the end of the day, that is a large part of the role of law enforcement here. Is fire and EMS don't go in if the scene's not safe. Like that's our job, to make sure it's safe for other people to be able to do their work. So that's something that we train very heavily on, we take pride on. And the way I look at it is, this might not be, a lot of these situations, the police aren't the best fit for it, but how can we create an environment for the right services to come in and then handle the situation is a lot of what we try to do.
Yeah, I remember one specific training for mobile crisis where somebody said what you just said, was that fire and EMS don't even go in until the police say it's safe. And so that like makes a lot of therapists go, oh, right. Like if it's not safe for a firefighter or EMS, I certainly don't want to be there either. Right?
One of my dear friends is a retired firefighter, is 6'10", and you would need me to tell him it's safe. So that's kind of comical to know. But again, that's our roles. If I can, I'd like to actually offer a quick anecdotal story as it relates to scene safety, because I think it relates to how the public don't fully realize how much police interface with those experiencing mental health crisis. Last springtime, I was in my office and I was preparing a presentation for Riviera School of Nursing. They were a little forward thinking, and they wanted to get a first responder's perspective on mental health response, which I found to be very, very insightful by then. While I was doing this presentation, in the span of 45 minutes, there was a call on the radio for a combative 89-year-old dementia patient that the police need to go and make sure it was safe, and an out-of-control 8-year-old that the police had to go and make sure the scene was safe for fire and EMS. Within 45 minutes, those both came in. Neither of those are enforcement actions. That's not something we're going to go in and effect an arrest on. We're going to go in there, and that's not really something, unless we absolutely have to, we're going to be using physical force on. That's something we're going to be using our verbal skills to make sure it's safe for the fire, EMS, and whomever else to come in. And that's something that I always like to kind of lend that perspective. Like, this is, when we say scene safe, when we say we are really the front line for this, that's kind of the examples that we come to.
Yeah, so. And it's so important. And I really don't think even our ES, emergency services staff, prior to mobile crisis, really got that, right? Because it was often long past scene safety that we were involved. Right now with mobile crisis, we've shortened that time
for sure.
For our involvement, which is good. But it means we have a little bit more eyes on to some of that, securing the safety
and to understand
happening.
That these calls are really, I mean, obviously crime can happen anywhere. That's what an attitude to have, but a lot of these scenarios are so far removed from, it's all community caretaking. I always like to tell this, brand new officer, my first day, first call was to tell a middle schooler to go do his homework. That was my first call as a police officer. So, hey, here we are. Not the bank robbery, not the whatever, it was junior. Do the math homework, please.
That's funny.
I've yet to follow up with where that young kid is at this point. He's probably like an MIT professor or something, but that's
telling others to do their homework.
Hopefully that's how it played out. But yeah, that was it. So.
Yeah, and I think like that gets to a lot of myths, certainly, about what do law enforcement agencies, officers do. And I think like a lot of times people have the images of TV in their mind, and that while those things do happen, they're certainly not, the 8 hours, 10-hour shift of every day
Correct. I mean, there are those calls, and there is, unfortunately, bad things do happen, and we need to go out there and really, control situations and take enforcement action. And there are some people that just need to be arrested and go to prison or jail or whatever it is. But there's a large part of the job which is community caretaking, and the idea is to find the people that can do both, and to know when it's time to do both. We can't be one-trick ponies. We have to wear multiple hats. That's what the community deserves, and that's what we're going to give them.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so vital to be seen as a community partner with everybody, because it really is about community. I love that, community caretaking. Right, it's the role, and hopefully it's, in many ways, it's behind the scenes, which is why you often don't get credit for that part.
I appreciate that.
Right, because people see the big fancy stuff when you're needing to do the enforcement, but they don't see, the barricades that could prevent bad things from happening, or they don't see the detail we had, just this weekend, making sure people crossed safely at a big event in our community. I mean, that's community caretaking.
Very much so. I'm going to confide something in you because we've known each other for a couple of years. I should have mentioned this earlier, but I also serve as one of the board of directors for Greater Nashua Mental Health. I've been doing that for 2 years, and it's just been a really, really great experience. I don't know if you've noticed, but every now and again when I come into the meetings, someone will ask me, how's things going on the force? Do you ever notice I chafe and I bristle when people say that? Yeah. You have noticed that? Because we're not a force.
Right.
We're a community partner.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. It's comical because to me it's that language.
Yeah, language.
It's well intentioned, but to me that goes against what we're trying to do here.
Right.
We're a partner. We're not an invading force. We're here to be together.
Right, we're a partner in community caretaking. Right. Certainly, our lens is empowering people. Making sure people have access to recovery. But really, you want the very same thing.
Yes, and it's funny you mentioned that because that's one of my favorite things to tell people is ultimately we want the same thing. It's just how are we going to get there?
Right, because we each have our different role.
Correct, and we each have a different lens in which we view situations. There's going to be things that the mental health folks are going to see that me and my officers aren't going to see, and there's going to be things that we see that you folks aren't going to see, and that's just the nature of the business. Right,
which is why we're better together, especially in this mobile crisis.
Yep.
I thought it was very smart. When there was really that push to make sure we were talking. We all knew what was going on. In the very beginning, it was kind of like it was being created, and then it was like, oh, we should have the police join. Right? And it's like, I think maybe we did that backward.
Well, hey, we're getting there, and it's all that matters is the progress, right?
Yeah, right. That we keep getting there for sure.
Yeah.
Now, maybe a little bit of a shift of topic,
sure.
But one that's a little near and dear to me is, again, maybe from what people see on the TV, a lot of people think about all first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS as superheroes and great folks. But being a mental health clinician, I also know the wear and tear on a human being of protecting the community and caretaking in such a way. And I think we don't often talk about just the support that officers themselves need for their own mental health. And I know that that's gotten better over time as well.
That has gotten a lot better. Luckily, the wellness revolution that's been going on for a couple of years now, it didn't skip law enforcement, which is really, really good. To be completely honest, that's really what I got my start with in mental health as it relates in this space was in the peer support world.
Yeah.
Back in 2012, I became a certified peer support specialist through the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation. I've been doing individual and group stress debriefings for years. I currently serve as the assistant commander for our peer support team. And that has been a huge thing to normalize the need for services, normalize speaking up, normalize that we're going to be thrust into these unnatural situations and we're going to have to perform. But then afterwards, we need to make sure we're, maintaining ourselves and taking care of ourselves and not just, unpacking the stressful events, but also are we living a healthy, resilient lifestyle? Like, what are we doing to maximize our efficiency? One of the things that we're trying to buck here is the trend is unfortunately nationally, most police officers die within 6-year retirement. Yeah. That's ridiculous, and that's something that we need to change.
Yeah.
The way that I look at it is my generation was the one that really brought the light and brought this to the forefront. the next generations here are going to be the ones that really make it a lot more normal and make the priority of the officer wellness is something that we really need, and the first responder wellness completely is needs to be a priority, because if we have to take care of ourselves, we have to take care of one another. So
Yeah.
it's been good.
Yeah, there's been a lot of increase in understanding the importance of mental health with our veterans because of experiences they've experienced and what's happened for them, and when they come home and what does that look like, and it's very parallel, and so it's like it's the next wave, right?
Correct.
The next wave is certainly looking at the health of our first responders, because they deserve our support too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
You do. It's funny you mention that, because wartime brings a lot of things out here. So wartime changed medicine, right? It's also changed, how we realized the long-term effects of critical stress was affecting the veteran population. It didn't take long to shift and to see how these were, and I don't want to compare policing in America to combat deployments, but those are a succinct amount of time. While this is a 20, 25-year career that is just getting longer, what does that look like long-term for the effect of people?
It certainly gave merit to the idea of studying it and looking at it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And unfortunately, I mean, law enforcement suicide is still on the rise, and that's something that we need to be mindful of and need to really make sure we're bucking the trend on. So it is a priority. I appreciate you mentioning that. That's something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's something that I would like to see become the norm. And we're getting there. We've made a lot of strides. We've been doing this work for over 12 years. To have it be going from a unit that was originally kind of looked at as we don't really understand what they do. They talk about feelings, which makes us all uncomfortable, so that's no good. To now, we're literally the first call when something breaks bad. If there's a really traumatic incident that an officer is involved with, if there's a critical incident, my team is getting the call, and we're going out and we're helping, we're providing appropriate support. And additionally, as we've been moving on this is stuff we've been doing all over the state for years. Yeah. So it's really good to bring this community together, to work with one another, and to really try to buck that trend of, these careers just really tearing people up.
Yeah, and I'm so appreciative of you mentioning the peer support of it, and I just think that there's so much good in that model.
Correct.
Of just, because it's not this external people telling you what to do that maybe don't get your every day. It's somebody that's been where you are, that knows the feelings you've felt, that knows there's a way through. And
that's the importance of peers in any work.
In any work, exactly.
So in the mental health field, in us in particular, like, to go back to the first responder community, you're not going to see too many first responders sitting on the leather couch talking to the guy in the Mr. Rogers sweater. Yeah, no. That's not really how it works. But we will go car to car, or we will talk back in the firehouse with our friends that have been there before. Yeah. And we will go through it that way. So let's go this peer model where we take those people that are the ones that are sought out as that shoulder to cry on or that person to vent to, give them some added training, give them a couple of clinicians that they think are cool, and let's start connecting the pieces here to get people some real meaningful help. And the same model obviously applies in the mental health space, working with those in recovery or those unhoused or whatever it is. So peers to me is really, the front line.
The front line, exactly. And then, like you said, kind of arming them. It's not quite the right terminology, but giving them the resources to then say, and maybe for you this is enough, but maybe for you, here's a little bit more, or I'm really worried about you. I might go even have a different conversation, right? And the tools to know where to have what kind of conversations.
It's formalizing that. So the way that I like to say this, is, at least is the way I run our peers, and I'm assuming you run it very similarly. They've already been doing this their whole life. Right. That's what they've been doing. They've had that natural empathy and that natural, for lack of a better way to put it, charisma, to be like, you're okay for me to trust, right? Give them some formalized training so they can know when it's time to start connecting to higher services, and then normalizing that. Because at the end of the day, we're all very, very well-intentioned. We're not clinicians. We're not mental health professionals. We're very caring individuals, but there's only so much we can do, in knowing where that line ends and where the next one begins is really important. And again, the big thing is normalizing it.
One of the things you just reminded me of is one of the things I like to say is, recognizing you can't do it alone is the prerequisite to collaboration.
That's a good point. That's a really good quote. I like that. I'm going to have
Right.
to steal that.
You can steal it. I'll let you. It's okay.
Thank you.
Right? But I think that's exactly right? We know what our lane is.
Correct.
And so, yes, we're the mental health clinicians. So it's not our job to secure the safety or decide whether it's safe. It's yours, not mine. And you're helping your peers, but then to say, maybe it's time for you to,
There's enough. And then what that looks like, same thing in the mental health space. There's a variety of different options.
Right.
Is it, going for, some talk therapy? Is it going to a group setting and a badge meeting? Those are very helpful.
Yeah.
We're fortunate. There's a law enforcement retreat that we use quite a bit. I volunteer at Camp Resilience. They serve veterans and first responders. Maybe getting away for a couple days and learning, getting a little bit more mental health literate, and then being with group of individuals that are experiencing similar crisis.
Right. Many paths.
I'm sorry, not crisis, failing to thrive. Right. So there's many paths to get there, and that's where I think the wellness revolution has been great, both in the first responder community as well
and in
as
general,
the community mental health space.
Yeah, for sure, right? And just recognizing that wellness is important, and we can each do it differently.
Yes, exactly.
I think is just of the utmost important because we've definitely learned there is no magic box, there is no magic pill, there is no magic book. There's certainly, hey, this worked for me, you might want to try it, but it might not work for you.
And I hate to say it, but the wisdom in ages, right? What has worked over the years for some individuals, and then being able to speak through like, hey, A, B, C, and D didn't work for me or for this group, but it might work for you, and being able to throw it out there.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you going there with me because it's just such an important topic.
I mean, all I know is that not talking about it is not working.
Yes.
So we can talk about it. It's okay.
Agree.
We can talk about first responder wellness. We can talk about first responder suicide. They're not going anywhere. Silence isn't an option at this point.
Well, I mean, to be honest, the same is true of therapists and mental health clinicians, right? Often, we like to think the helpers don't need help, but the helpers are humans who have the same human problems and stressors.
Absolutely.
Both in and outside of work that others have. And so it's really important.
The days of work and home are long gone.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, we're whole humans that impacts everything.
And that's actually a really good point here is what are the support for the mental health field? Like what does, I'm sure there's a lot of things out there, but making sure we have, good and engaged supervisors that are minding their people and understanding when the caseload or the clients are getting to be a bit much, and then what can they do to support? And there's a lot that goes into that. And that's why having such a big and good organization like Greater Nashua Mental Health is important to making sure we're taking care of the people that are taking care of the community.
Yeah, exactly. And what makes it so complex.
Yes,
to go back to the complexity. I'd be remiss if we didn't go back to community safety for a minute before we wrap up. Because I do think there's a lot of things that as a department, the police department does that supports. And one that comes to my mind is like medication take back. And are there other things that people might not know about that are part of just the safety of taking care of a community? So
there's a lot that goes into that. A lot of things that we push out there. The drug take back program is huge. There's a safe in the front lobby of the police department that people can deposit their medicine. It's safe to get it off the streets.
And it's available all the time.
Correct, it is. There are drug take-back days where it's a little bit bigger and they're able to do larger scale events. But either which way, the safe is available all the time.
Yeah, I think people think it's not always available. So I love reminding people, no, you don't have to wait for a day.
Yes.
If something is expired or somebody's coming to visit and you're worried about something being unsafe, you can just drop it off.
And the other thing too is if you're not mobile for whatever reason, we can come and pick it up. That's an option as well. Another thing that we do that's really good is a lot of youth educational programs. Our school resource officers are very involved. There's the Mirror Project, which explains for youth to interact with police and other things of that nature. There's the Police Athletic League, PAL. I could spend here all days talking about what those folks do and all the community resource stuff that's out there. One of the big programs that we're just getting into now is we're calling it the Just in Case program, right? Which is, it's basically anyone that might be an at-risk individual, a family member or caretaker can come in and fill out a questionnaire so we'll know how to assist that individual should we get a phone call for them. Originally, this was kind of like Operation Safe Return.
Yep.
And then the Voluntary Autism Registration Program, we kind of did away with compartmentalizing
Putting it all together.
And putting it all together, which I think is going to be a really, really great program. So this is something that we're just debuting. It's going out there on all the socials and being pushed out there as an option, and we'll be in touch on the best ways to put it out there. But I think this is something that's been born kind of out of, necessity here. The example that I give for that was 3 days in a row, we responded to what was called in as a domestic or someone being forced into a car. We would show up lights and sirens thinking it was some violent encounter, and it was an individual with autism having an outburst with his caretaker. So now cruisers show up, lights and sirens, greatly exacerbates the situation. So on day 3 of this, we said, we think it's this, let's stop doing that. And we went there normally, but again, we're only operating on the information that we have. And we're able to realize this is the better way to handle it. So it'll be information the police can readily access to better. It's done on a voluntary basis for us to be able to better serve the population. So it's going to be huge.
You remind me of the other important thing about collaboration is we're only as good as the information we share with one another.
Yes.
Right? And I know we're always asking of you all to give us information if we're heading into a mobile, but the same is on the opposite end true, that the more information you all have allows you to show up in a way that's most supportive.
Correct.
But in the absence of that information, you have to assume safety first.
Correct. And we understand as far as the information sharing, there's only so much you folks can share or mental health community can share given confidentiality, and we respect that and we can work in that space. But it is, I don't want to use the word frustrating, but when we go there, again, we have to operate under the assumption that the information we have is accurate. And we get there and it turns out that we're just making the situation worse by our response. But we'd be remiss to not go in such a way.
Right.
And that's when I think having some really switched on patrol officers that were like, hey, I've been here 2-3 days in a row and it wasn't that. I'm just going to dial down my response and err on the side that maybe it's not that. And luckily it worked out a little better.
Yeah, and I look forward to hearing more about how we can support you get out the information about this voluntary program. I love it. What's it called? Just in Case?
Just
Is that
in
right?
Case, yep. And that's not, it's a term that's been used in a variety of different jurisdictions. It's not proprietary or anything like that, but I think it's just that right phraseology of what we're looking to accomplish. We don't want to be at risk or this, that, the other. It's just in case. Like if you have a loved one or someone along those lines that we feel as though we might benefit from some information, it'd be very helpful. Drawing on some experiences of some nonverbal individuals that have absconded, and we go there and we're kind of like, I don't know. We obviously know that it's not a criminal event, but we need to get this person back to where they should be. And it takes someone showing up. Oh, that's so and so. They live over here. Well, let's try and cut that down a little bit and see what information we can use ahead of time.
Yeah. I love it.
It'll be good. Just another way to collaborate.
Another way to collaborate and another way to support the community.
Yes.
Right? It's not, and to help you all respond in the way that's most helpful.
Correct.
Right? Because we all have the same goal. We all, right? We all have the same desired outcome, which is to have a thriving community that's safe.
Yes.
And so the more we can collaborate, the more we can do that better together.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. Well, anything we didn't touch on that you're hoping we would?
I guess I would just like to close with this is, police officers, I like to think of us as guardians. I like to think of us as protectors. I like to think of us as someone that's there to work with the community, to help the community. I like to think of us as peacemakers. Yeah. I don't like to think of us as a force. I don't like to think of us as an opposition. I like to think of us as another resource that's there to help the community. It's something that I've given the vast majority of my adult life to be a part of. It's something I'm proud of. Yeah. And, we've taken a few licks over the years, but the heart and core of our ability to want and our desire to serve is there. And just we're here to work with you.
I love that. Such an important last message because that's been what I've had the privilege to experience in my role and in all my years working at the mental health center. And other people, that's not the interaction that they get. So I appreciate what you do and the importance of that message, that really it's kind of like, it's just like anything else. When we have connections in conversations, we learn, oh, maybe this isn't exactly what I thought it was.
Yes.
Thank you for taking the time to be here and chat with me so that we could empower the community to know more about the collaborations we're working on, the great work that the police department here in Nashua is doing, as well as others around the state. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of the Empower Hour today. Again, this is the Empower Hour with Greater Nashua Mental Health, and we wish you an empowered day.